Hi everyone, my name is Phyllis and I'm the owner of Mad Moody Quilting Fabrics. This is part 2 of the pineapple tutorial using the Creative Grids Pineapple Tool Trim Tool. Okay, I am doing the block that is in the Pineapple Popout Spice pattern designed by Jean Ann Wright, and it's cut loose press is the printer, and this is the pattern. I'll put the link down below so you can do it, and I'm showing you how to do the block that is in here. And to do this block, you would need 2 of the rulers. You would need the mini ruler, okay, the Pineapple Trim Tool mini ruler, and that's what I did for this center one. Okay, I used the mini. Now I'm going to go and continue making this block and using the Pineapple Trim Tool 6, 8, and 10 ruler, and that's the same thing but bigger. Okay, the mini does 4, 5, and 6. This does 6, 8, and 10, and there is another one, but it's a skinny pineapple to 12 inches, I think. I can't remember the numbers on that, but I will put the link down to that. To that. They come with instructions and very detailed instructions for each ruler. And today we are going to continue making this into a 10-inch block. Now let me show you what that looks like. That looks like this. So part 1, we did the center using the mini. Now we're going to do the transition into the larger ruler, and I'm going to show you that now. So let me switch over to the overhead camera. I think things have moved. Just give me a second. There, I think that's better. Okay, just gonna move it a little bit more. Yeah, that looks way better. Gotta make sure I'm in the frame. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We are going to do the transition in the white. That's what I've already sewn those on, and then I'm gonna cut those, and then we're gonna continue doing the logs out to the corners, and then I'm going to show you what to do for the corners. I cannot give you measurements or cut sizes or anything like that because this is not my pattern, but you can get all the information when you buy the pattern. If you just want to do the mini ones, then you can just buy the ruler. All the instructions on how to do all the different rounds are right there. Or if you want to do up to 10 inch, like just a normal 10-inch pineapple, then you can buy this one and all the instructions are there. But the pattern is so sweet by using them both. When I saw that pattern, I went, that is a really nice looking pattern. Look at this block. So I'm going to put this aside, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Now, they tell you, this is where I'm referring to the pattern, not the instructions with the rulers. They tell you that to use the wider strips, for the last white before you go into the purple, because I'm going to use purple on the outside. As you see here, I have a green center, a purple block, and then I use the green to go out to the corners. So this is a purple center, green tiny block, and then I'm going to use the purples to go out to the outer edges of the block. So they tell me in the pattern, I'm going to get back to this. They tell me in the pattern that we need to put on the wider strips that you would use for the larger ruler, but they tell you to cut. They tell you to use round 7, follow the instructions for the mini pineapple tool, but use the wider strips, like you'll use the wider strips that they call for. So that's what I've done. I've put the wider strips on, And now I'm going to use I'm doing round 7, and there's a line here, and I'm going to line that line up to this here. So here we go. And I'm checking to make sure that there's some dotted lines along here. And I'm just checking to make sure that they look pretty straight to that edge. And I think that looks good. That looks good. So we're going to go ahead and cut that. And then we're going to turn it one way. And we're going to do that again, lining up that white line. And it says right on the right line, 45 angle trim line, rounds 3, 5, 7, and 9. We use the squares in the center to do the even rounds. We're just going to go all the way around, making sure that we are cutting this equally. This is the last cut. And there we go. So there it is. It looks good. Now we are going into, we're finished with the mini, so we're going to move on to working with the next. So we're going to go ahead and put these on all the way around here. Okay, so I'm just going to line that up, and we're going to switch to the camera. We're going to switch to the sewing machine camera, and I'm going to start sewing these on. Now I'll sew opposite. I'll sew the strips opposite of each other, iron theirs out, and then sew the next strips opposite from each other. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and put the next one on. There, that's done. I'm going to iron this quickly off of camera. And then I'll put the last 2 rounds, last 2 bars or logs or whatever you want to call them on either side of this. There we go. There we go. We're going to put on one last round, one last strip. I'm just kind of eyeballing it to make sure it's overlapping enough. So I've cut these strips just a little longer than maybe I needed them, but that's okay. There we go. Now, they say in the instructions when you switch over to the larger ruler is to start on round 4 to trim this. So let me take a look at that. I'm just going to get that out of the way. Now they say round 4. So this is round 4 square. So that is going to go around this section here. And no, it's not going to go around that section. It's going to go around this section, this smaller section. There we go. There you go. And then we're just going to trim this and turn it. So we're taking, there's a square here that says centering square round 4. So you were going to round that up around this half square triangle that fits on that one. Okay. So let's, oh, sorry, I didn't switch back. I'm so sorry. All right. So let's start over again. So we have this square here, and we're cutting these down, and they tell me when we switch to the larger ruler to do round center square round 4. So that's this square here. It says right there, centering square round 4. We're going to place that down on this section right here. It's going to fit in here. So, and we're going to just make sure that it looks lined up, and then we can go ahead and trim this. So we're going to trim that, we're going to trim that, and then we're going to pick this up, turn it this way, and now we're going to go centering. I'm going to center it again, and I also check to make sure it's lined up here, because this is cut to size. And then we're just going to go ahead and cut that. Then we're going to turn it and line it up again. And I'm going to make sure that it's lined up on this side. Not quite lined up. There we go. Oh, that looks much better. And we're going to go ahead and trim that. So now we have all the sides trimmed. Now we're going to do round 5. So we started on round 4. We're going to switch to round 5. And again, round 5 is this line here. And I'll show you. There's a line, there's this line right here. And it says on that, it says 45 angle trim line, rounds 3, 5, and 7 along there. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get round 5 on. And I'm lining it up to that point, and I think I'm going to lose a little bit of that point. And I think I'm supposed to lose a little bit. Not sure. Anyways, it's what it is. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and line that up. So I'm going to sew this. We're going to switch to the sewing machine. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and line this one up. There we go. And we have 2 more logs to put on. And get these pleated and ready to go. And we're going to just line, I'm going to line that pleat up to that point. So we have equal amounts on either side. I find that's important so you don't end up having something too small on the other side, or you end up kind of eyeballing and then it's kind of skewed. You want things to be as straight as possible. That's why I love these rulers, because you're squaring up as you go every time. You're not just logging. You're not just sewing all the logs on and then and then squaring the full, you're squaring things up as you go. So you end up getting these really perfect blocks. Even when you make a little mistake, it still comes out looking just fine. All right, so now I'm going to switch to the overhead, and we're going to go ahead and get this ironed. Now, I've only made the sample block I've only made a sample block and this one. So the sample block I did make a mistake, but I didn't iron this one. But I discovered it on the next colored round that I had made that mistake. Chose not to undo anything and just continue on. And it turned out just fine. And I'll show you what I mean by I made that mistake. So when I was building up this, you see how this is right to the point? It should be like it should be there. It should be cut off there, like this one. You see how the point is not there? So that was the mistake. I had really, and I just made the decision that I wasn't gonna, because I was 2 rounds up, and I decided that it's staying like that. Tough ditties. And I went with that. All right, so now we're doing round 5. And we are going to line that line up to this seam here. And we're going to make sure that things look pretty straight. That looks good. And we're just going to trim that off. And then we're going to turn and line that line up again, making sure that it looks straight. We're going to turn it again, and we're going to cut, lining that line up one, and then we have one more cut after that. There we go. And look how easy this is. I've done a pineapple block in the past. It was, I did a log cabin, after my sampler class that I took at the local quilt shop. I did a log cabin, and that turned out really good. But you know, it was more of a traditional. I actually used Eleanor Burns' Quilt in a Day book for the log cabin, and there was no such thing as these kind of rulers. So my blocks were not perfect, I can assure you of that. There we go. There's the first 2 rounds. Now we are going to go ahead and sew on this one, and we are going to find the center on these. And I'm just going to eyeball that center. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to switch to the sewing machine camera, and we're going to continue working on this. So like I said, there was no such thing as these squaring up tools back in my day when I first started. And my pineapple block top turned out really, really good. Because it's not technically a hard block to do. But it was hard. It was a hard block in the sense that was easy to get your logs and these points as you go out skewed a little bit. So that was I'm just lining this up to that point so I know I'm centered on. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a pleat here, and I'm lining it up to that point right there, so I can make sure that I have equal amounts on either side, because these strips are slightly smaller than the width of the block so far. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to just switch over so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm trying to line up to that little point, centering this strip on the block. So I pleat this, and then I just kind of eyeball. I roughly do it. All right, switch over to the sewing machine, and here we go. So that's what I do. I just line things up. There we go. And I'm going to just prep the last one, and then I'll show you how we cut that, this round. This is round 6, round 6 on the big block, because we started with round 4. And here we are, the last log to go on, and we're going to get this ironed, and then I'll show you how to cut this one up. All right, so let's switch to the overhead. All right, I'm just going to get this quickly ironed. There we go. All right, so now we are doing round 6. Okay, this was round 4, 5, and 6. So we need this corner. Round 6. So we're going to look for the square that says centering square round 6. And that square is the same size as this section right here. Okay, so we're going to line that up. And I'm just making sure it kind of lines up fairly good. Now, of course, you have to take your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and if you make sure that your 1/4 inch seam allowance is perfect, and nobody has a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, but try to get them as close to as possible, and then it's easier to line these squares, these centering squares up. So now what I do is I not only line up here, but I also line up on this cut edge that we just cut. And I make sure everything looks straight. Okay, there's that one. And we have one more to do. Lining up the set. And here, I want this here lined up. Here we are. Last one done. So there we are. Round 6 is done. That looks really good. Round 6 done. However you want to lay it out. Now we're going to do round 7. And again, I'm going to finger press because I want to make sure, and I'm going to use this point as my reference. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and prep all the other ones and put them by my sewing machine so I can just pick them up and go. I'm making sure that the print is on the right side so I don't get my pieces sewn on upside down or backwards. All right, so to the sewing machine we go. So here we go. We're going to do round 7. Yeah, I really like, this is the second block that I've done. The first one was the sample. So, and like I said before, I do this on purpose. I purposely start filming my tutorials when I've only just started using the block. It's not like I've used this block, because I want to show everybody that these specialty rulers are not hard to use. They're not, they're quite easy to comprehend. It doesn't take long to figure out how they work. And look how fast you can get into this. Now, what you can do is do a sample to learn how to use your first block could be a sample block, and take note of the cut strips that you used and stuff like that. So then when you go to make your actual coat with the actual fabric, you can chain sew all those pieces on each block. So you would chain sew all one side, then you would iron that, and then chain sew all the other side. You can chain sew these things together quite quickly. And if you have all your logs pre-cut to the length that you need, not just the width, but the length, cut the, subcut all down everything, and then stack them, and then you just chain sew, and you'd have all your, I think there's 20 blocks in this quilt, but all your blocks done fairly quickly. So we're going to switch over to the overhead. And see, now I'm just going to go ahead and iron. There we go. So now we have one more round to do. And then we have what they call dog ears to put on. So I'll finish the last 2 rounds. So this one is round 4, 5, 6, it's round 7. So we're going to use this line again, and we're going to line it up here, and we're going to make sure that we've lined that up pretty straight. And that looks pretty good. There we go. I'm going to turn it 1/2 turn and line that line up again, making sure that it's on that seam quite straight. And I'm checking these lines to make sure that they're pretty straight, or as straight as they can be. And then we cut. And then we'll go and do this one. We're almost done. My head gets in the way. I have that camera. Sorry. I don't always notice things like that. There we go. And I kind of I drop my head down so I can make sure I'm lined up straight. And now I'm trying to go like this, going to the side. So just bear with me. All right, that looks straight. And there, that's the last cut on that round. And now we have one more colored round to do. And here are my pieces for that. And I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be a little harder to get it squared up. And actually, I think I'm going to just use this. Oh, that's really close. So let's switch to the sewing machine and start sewing these. These are the last logs before we do what they call the dog ears. And I have those pre-cut to the size that the pattern says to do. And these patterns are really well written. And there's lots of different ones. Okay. And there's lots of different ones that I have in stock from them. So I'm just going to use this to see if I'm lined up. That's pretty good. I'm doing that because I don't have a point anywhere down here close to the strip that I'm putting on. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, and I'm just putting this here like this so I can see that it's lined up. Now you could go ahead and I'll do that for the next one and put a fold in the fabric on the block, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And I think I forgot to switch over to the sewing machine. Sorry about that. All right, so I'll show you what I mean. You can fold this and find the center by doing that, and then folding this one and and then just line those up. And that's another easy way to make sure that it's lined up. So let me switch to the sewing machine. There we go. And I'll do that one more time. That's pretty quick. That's pretty quick to do it that way. So you just fold, line these up, do finger press, and that's pretty close to the center. You fold this, finger press that, open it up, and line up the two folds. And that's it. We're on the last strip being put on. There we go. And now we're just going to put this aside, and we are going to iron this block, and then I'm going to show you how this last round, and this is an even round, this is round 8. I think we're on round 8. And then we'll just put the there we go. So now we're going to cut this down, and then we're going to put what they call dog ears in. So let me just, all right, so now we have, hold on a minute. just got to figure this out. So we're doing round 8. So we need to find the round 8 centering square, which is this one right here. And it's this one right here. And we are going to go ahead and trim this down. So I'm going to make sure that things look straight this way, this square is on properly. And we're going to go ahead and trim this off. And we're going to trim this one. Okay, and then we're going to do a turn. We're going to put the round 8 square around the appropriate patchwork square. We're going to make sure this is lined up. We're going to make sure that lines look lined up, and this is lined up, and we're going to go ahead and cut that. One more cut, and then we're going to put what they call dog ears, so we can square this up into a 10-inch block. Right now it's like, it's not a 10-inch, it's not square, so it's not square. Okay, my head's probably getting in the way again, eh? So again, I'm checking, I'm making sure this here is lined up, and I'm making sure that the proper square, which is the round 8, because that's what we're doing. And there we go, round 8, done. And now we're going to put on corners. So those are here. That's these. And we are just going to, and they should fit on like that. They're just a little wider. We're going to trim this down to a corner. So we're just going to sew those on. I'll bring these close to me, and we're going to go ahead and get these sewn on. And like I said, we can chain sew. You know, you make all your blocks, or you make X number of blocks in you're making so many of one colorway, so many of another colorway. So you could cut all the logs and everything and then line them up, and then just chain sew all that side, chain sew the next side to each block. So you would be sewing multiple blocks together by doing chaining. I'm only doing the one block, so for this tutorial, but you could chain sew each one of each block, and then this way you can sit down and do a lot of sewing in one step, so you're not jumping up and down. But I do recommend that you do your cuts, do one sample, and take note of all your log widths or strip widths that are supposed to be there, because you just need to make sure that you are doing got the right right width. So I would do one sample and take note of those, and then when you go to prep all your other pieces for all your other blocks, you've done your preliminary measuring and everything, and know what works for widths, and this way you can take note of those and then just cut all your logs to fit. All right, so now we got to turn this into a 10-inch square. We're going to continue with this. We're going to line up this edge and this edge to the raw edge of the block, and making sure my head's going to get in the way again. Sorry. Because I really want to make sure that that I'm not cutting off anything. Now I'm only going to do this corner and this corner, and then I'll do this corner and this corner later, like the next one. I'm going to turn each one, and I'm only going to do one corner at a time. And this way, if there's any wonkiness, I can control it a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this edge here. Sorry, I'm out of shot. I'm going to take this edge of the ruler and make sure it's lined up to the fabric there. I'm going to make sure this edge is lined up. And I'm also going to make sure that this edge is lined up. And if it is, I'm going to go ahead and just go in and cut. It's not perfect, is it? Anyways, I'm just going to leave that. That's inside the seam. I'm not going to worry about it. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this. I'm going to make sure that this corner okay, there we go. There we go. And this is the last one. And it should measure, if all's gone well, and I don't think it has gone perfect, but hey, it's what it is. I'm not going to cry over it. It should measure 10.5 by 10.5, including the seam allowance. There we go. So there's your block, all done. I just think it's really, really pretty. And let me get out the other one. And there's your two blocks in the same colorway, but one opposite from the other. Now, that's how easy it is. Now, these are not perfect. As long as this is in the 1/4 inch, I don't care. This is probably a little off. These could have been a little bit bigger, but this is what it is. And they line up. They are the same size, so I'm not crying over it. It's what it is. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to see more of these, ring the bell, subscribe and ring the bell, and we'll see you on the next day of tutorials. Bye-bye. Happy quilting.